I was sitting in one of those hyper-modern, wellness-focused airport lounges last week.
Yeah.
And I was watching this woman who just seemed to have her life completely under control.
Oh,
she was dressed in that expensive athleisure wear, sipping a green juice, and she was reading this thick book on Stoic philosophy. She looked like the literal embodiment of discipline.
The ideal modern person.
Exactly. But then she reaches into her bag and she pulls out a small pack of those hyper-processed neon orange snack chips.
You know the kind.
Oh, I know the kind. Engineered in a lab to be irresistible.
Completely. And what happened next was, honestly, it was almost uncomfortable to watch. The Stoicism book was just abandoned. Mid-sentence, her movements became really mechanical and rapid and almost desperate. She wasn't really eating. It was more like a frenzy. Her eyes were completely glazed over, just fixed on some point in the distance, like she'd been temporarily possessed by something else entirely. And when the bag was empty, she just stared at her orange-stained fingers with this look of profound, localized confusion, like she'd just woken up.
Exactly, like she'd just woken up from a trance and couldn't account for the last 10 minutes of her life. And, we usually look at a scene like that, and our first thought is gluttony or weakness. We tell ourselves that if we just had more willpower, we wouldn't end up like her.
Or like the person we become staring at a screen for 6 hours.
Right. But what if her reaction wasn't a failure of her mind at all? What if it was a perfect success of her biology? In early 2026, a research team at the University of Delaware uncovered this neural blueprint that just changes the way we have to look at every single bad habit we possess. They found a specific valuation algorithm in the brain, an algorithm that doesn't care about your long-term goals. It doesn't care about your philosophy.
It just cares about the immediate signal.
Yes. It is effectively a 50,000-year-old piece of software that was designed for a world of extreme scarcity. And right now, it's being forced to run in an environment of engineered abundance. It turns out we aren't addicted in the way we think we are. We are simply living through a catastrophic mismatch where our ancient hardware is being systematically hijacked by the modern world.
And that idea of a mismatch, it creates a completely different lens for viewing human behavior, doesn't it?
It changes everything.
Because when you frame it that way, as a mismatch rather than a moral failure, the whole conversation it shifts. I mean, we spend so much time berating ourselves for a loss of control, whether it's the chips or the doom scrolling or the impulse buying.
Why did I do that feeling?
Exactly. But the research coming out of Delaware, specifically from Leisha Xiao's team this past January, it suggests that the loss of control is actually the machine. The machine working exactly as it was built to work.
That's the part that really unnerved me when I was digging into the papers. The idea that the machine is working correctly. We aren't broken, we're just obsolete. Or maybe our environment has just evolved way faster than our hardware can keep up.
That's a better way to put it.
So, okay, let's get into the weeds of this valuation algorithm. Because when I hear the word algorithm, I'm thinking of, Instagram or TikTok. But you're telling me we have one wet wired into our skulls.
We do. And it is not a metaphor. I want to be really clear about that. It's a literal computational process. The Delaware team identified what's called a conserved neural circuit. I want to pause on that word, conserved.
Conserved, okay.
In evolutionary biology, if a mechanism is conserved, it means it is so fundamental, so absolutely essential to survival that nature hasn't dared to touch it for millions and millions of years.
It's like a load-bearing wall of the brain. You can't just knock it down and renovate.
You can't. Exactly. It's foundational. And they found this specific circuitry in Drosophila melanogaster, the common fruit fly. And then they found the homologs, the structural equivalents, in us.
Wait, back up a second. The fruit fly.
The fruit fly.
That is humbling, bordering on insulting, actually. You're saying that the same piece of software that drives a fly to buzz around a rotting banana in my kitchen is the same software driving me to check my email for the 50th time today.
The underlying architecture is identical. Now, obviously, the inputs are different. The complexity of the organism around it is vastly different. But the core logic, the pricing mechanism, as they call it, it's the same.
The pricing mechanism?
Yes. The function of this circuit is the real-time pricing of stimuli.
Real-time pricing.
Think of it like a high-frequency trading algorithm on Wall Street. Before you are explicitly aware of what you're looking at. So before your conscious mind forms the thought, oh, that is a donut, or that's a notification badge.
Yeah.
This circuit has already run a calculation. It has assigned a value. It has slapped a price tag on that sensory input. And this all happens in milliseconds. It happens before your willpower, which resides in the much slower, much more metabolically expensive prefrontal cortex, even gets the memo.
So by the time I'm telling myself I really shouldn't eat those chips, the trading algorithm in my brain has already bought 1 million shares of Chips Incorporated.
The trade is already executed before the regulator even shows up to the office. And this brings us to the core reason why it's so powerful. It's what they call the thrifty bias.
The thrifty bias.
This algorithm wasn't written for an airport lounge in 2026. It was coded, tested, and deployed for the Pleistocene, for the EEA, the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness.
We talk about the EEA a lot on here, but let's really paint the picture for a second. We're talking about the savanna, right? Not just geographically, but as a state of being.
It's a state of being defined by two absolutely brutal constraints. One, calories are incredibly difficult to obtain. And two, novelty is rare and, more often than not, extremely dangerous.
All right, you don't just walk past a refrigerator. You don't have a supermarket.
Yeah.
If you stumble upon a high-energy, dense food source, say a honeycomb or a bush full of ripe fruit, that isn't just a snack. That's a miracle.
It's a winning lottery ticket.
It's life or death.
It is. If you ignore it, you might starve. If you eat it and it turns out to be just, okay, well, you've lost nothing but a moment of your time. So the valuation algorithm is biased. It is tuned to overvalue. It assigns a massively disproportionate weight to high-energy cues and to novel information.
Because the cost of a miss, of ignoring the honeycomb, is potentially infinite, catastrophic.
Precisely. And this entire system, this valuation, it runs on a specific type of fuel. It's called reward prediction error, or RPE.
RE.
This is a concept that I think is often misunderstood, especially in popular science. We usually think of dopamine as the reward itself. We think, I eat the chocolate, I get the dopamine splash, I feel good.
Yeah, that's the standard explanation.
Yeah.
Dopamine equals pleasure.
But it's factually incorrect, or at the very least, it's woefully incomplete. Dopamine, in this context, is not the pleasure chemical. It's a teaching signal.
A teaching signal.
Think of it as a data entry clerk, not a party host. Its entire job is to update the ledger of value in your brain. And here's the kicker. It only cares about errors.
Errors. I mean errors.
It cares about the difference between what you expected to happen and what actually happened. So let's say you're a Pleistocene human. You predict a particular berry bush will give you 10 calories of energy. You eat the berries and you get exactly 10 calories.
Okay, so the brain is happy, right?
The brain is satisfied, but it is chemically quiet. There is no massive spike of dopamine. Why? Because the prediction matched the reality. There's nothing new to learn. The ledger is already accurate. But if you predict 10 calories and you get 1,000 calories, a massive positive prediction error, that is when the system explodes with dopamine.
The brain goes, whoa. We were wrong. We completely underestimated this. Mark this location on the map. Do this again immediately.
That is exactly the signal. That surge of dopamine is the brain physically rewriting its own map to ensure you repeat that behavior. It's a better than expected signal. And that is what drives learning and compulsion.
Okay, this feels crucial because to really understand the trap we're in, we need to understand the mechanics. The Delaware study pointed to this specific model called PVLV. Primary value, learned value. I want to really chew on this because it feels like the engine room of the whole problem.
It is the engine room. It's the absolute core of the circuit. The PVOV model is a framework in computational neuroscience that separates the promise from the receipt.
Okay, I like that. The promise versus the receipt. So walk me through the key players in this drama.
So first you have the learned value system, the LV. This is largely mapped to the amygdala. The amygdala is the scout, it's the hype man. It's constantly scanning the environment for conditioned stimuli.
Conditioned stimuli.
Yeah.
So signs that predict a reward is coming.
Signs. Exactly. The amygdala sees the neon orange bag of chips. It doesn't taste the chips yet, but it has learned from past experience that this bag means salt and fat and crunch are imminent.
So the scout screams, incoming. High value target approaching.
And that scream drives an initial burst of dopamine based purely on anticipation. That's the promise. Then you have the primary value system, the PV. This is primarily located in the ventral striatum. This is the part that processes the unconditioned stimulus, the actual chips hitting your tongue.
The receipt.
The receipt. Now, here is the absolutely elegant and, for us, tragic mechanism that explains the glitch. The ventral striatum has a feature called shunting inhibition.
Shunting inhibition. That sounds like a a complex medical procedure.
Think of it more like a noise-canceling headphone, or maybe a very, very strict bouncer at a nightclub. If the amygdala, the scout, predicts a reward is coming, and the striatum, the receipt, gets exactly that reward, the striatum effectively tells the dopamine neurons to quiet down. It inhibits their firing.
Wait, hold on. So if I get what I wanted, I don't get the big dopamine spike.
You get the sensory pleasure, of course. The chips taste good, but you don't get the learning spike. You don't get that compulsion reinforcement signal. The brain's internal monologue is, yep, we knew this was coming. This is not new data. Let's save the energy.
So the brain is actually designed to be bored by consistency. It's built to seek novelty.
It is designed to ignore the expected so it can focus all its resources on the surprising. Those big phasic bursts, the huge spikes that drive addictive behavior, they only happen when things are better than expected.
What happens if the scout promises the moon, but the receipt is, well, empty?
Then you meet the villain of the circuit, a little region called the lateral habenula.
The lateral habenula, okay.
If the amygdala hypes up a reward, this notification is going to be amazing social validation. And the striatum finds it lacking. Oh, it's just a spam email. The lateral habenula activates, and it drives a sharp dip in dopamine. It silences the neurons below their normal baseline firing rate.
And what does that feel like to us?
It feels like disappointment. It feels like a craving. It's that physical drop you feel in your chest. It is a punishment signal. It's the brain telling itself, you predicted wrong. That was a waste of energy. Don't do that again.
So in the wild, this is a perfect guidance system. It's flawless. I see a lion track, I expect danger. I see a berry bush, I expect food. If the bush is empty, the habenula punishes me so I don't waste my time on empty bushes in the future. It's all about efficiency.
It keeps you efficient. It keeps you alive. It perfectly balances the go and the stop signals.
But we aren't in the wild anymore. We're in a world where the bushes are infinite and the berries are engineered by food scientists and programmers to be hyperpotent, which leads me to a story that I think perfectly illustrates what happens when this delicate, beautiful PVLV mechanism gets completely smashed by modern technology. I heard a firsthand account recently. We'll just call it story one. It was about a young software engineer in San Francisco, and he was living in what you'd have to call the Goldilocks zone of modern existence. He had a high-paying job in tech. He lived in a building with climate control so precise he never felt hot or cold, and he had fiber optic internet and delivery apps for literally everything.
So he had completely solved the ancient survival problem.
100%.
Yeah.
He had removed every single localized friction from his life, but he described his internal state as starving. He said his brain felt like a saturated sponge. He'd come home from work, sit on his couch, and open a short-form video app, and he would just scroll for 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours straight.
That is a textbook case of RPE saturation.
And he said this, which I found so telling. He said, I wasn't looking for something funny. I wasn't even really looking for pleasure. I was just trying to feel not empty. He described a very specific sensation. Every single swipe of his thumb was a promise, and every new video was a little hit. But because the hits never, ever stopped, he never felt satisfied. He just felt numb, but he couldn't stop. He said it was like his hand was possessed.
That phrase, trying to feel not empty, that is the clinical definition of the breakdown we're talking about. That engineer is experiencing the catastrophic failure of the reward prediction error mechanism.
So how does it actually break? Is it just too much volume? Is it the speed?
It's the lack of a stop signal. It's the lack of finitude. In nature, rewards are finite. You find the beehive, you eat the honey, and then either the bees sting you or, more simply, the honey runs out. The episode ends. There's a refractory period where your system can reset.
Right.
In the engineer's app, the honey is infinite. There is no bottom to the bowl.
And it's zero cost. I think that's a huge part of it.
That is the key variable. It is zero cost. He doesn't have to climb a tree. He doesn't have to hunt an animal. He just has to move his thumb 2 centimeters. So the amygdala, the scout, is just screaming, jackpot, jackpot, minimal effort, maximum reward, over and over and over again.
It's like seeing a free buffet that never closes and is also being piped directly into your mouth.
And because the rewards are what we call supernormal, they are brighter, faster, louder, more novel than anything in nature, The striatum never really gets a chance to exert that shunting inhibition effectively, or, to be more precise, the system just gets confused. It expects the high, gets the high, but the high is so frequent that the entire baseline of what feels normal begins to shift.
It's like the inflation of value. A dollar isn't worth a dollar anymore.
It's a perfect analogy. The brain, in an act of self-preservation, tries to protect itself from this constant deluge of dopamine. If you scream at someone long enough, they go deaf. If you flood the brain with dopamine long enough, it begins to downregulate the receptors.
Downregulate.
It physically removes the D2 receptors, the ears that listen for the chemical. The brain is trying to deafen itself to the constant shouting.
So the engineer isn't scrolling to get high anymore. He's scrolling because his baseline has dropped so low that normal life now feels like pain or boredom, which is a form of pain.
He is in what's called a dopamine deficit state. He is scrolling just to get back to zero. He is scrolling to ward off the punishment signal from the lateral labellula that's screaming at him because his reality no longer matches the inflated expectation his brain has set.
And all the while his GO system, this mesocortical limbic pathway, is revving at 9,000 RPM, what is happening to his brakes?
Yeah.
The part of his brain that should step in and say, hey, maybe we should stop now.
The brakes are melting. The stop network is the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. This is the sophisticated, slow, rational part of the brain that cares about your job, your relationships, your sleep schedule, your long-term goals.
The CEO of the brain.
The CEO. And the research on this is, well, it's terrifying. It shows that chronic exposure to these high-intensity digital stimuli leads to actual physical cortical thinning.
I mean, physical loss of brain matter.
Yeah.
For real.
Yes. Gray matter density demonstrably decreases in the orbitofrontal cortex. So at the exact moment the engineer needs his willpower the most because he is fighting a technologically engineered superstimulus, his biological capacity for willpower is physically eroding.
It's like trying to stop a runaway freight train. But every time you try, you realize the brake pads have turned to dust.
And that is why he feels possessed. It's not a feeling, it's a neurological reality. The ancient, thrifty valuation algorithm has taken the wheel, and the rational driver has been locked in the trunk.
This whole glitch manifests as that zoned out numbness, that addiction. But there's another side to this mismatch coin. It isn't just the addiction to pleasure, it's the addiction to threat, or maybe more accurately, the inability to correctly calibrate threat. I want to pivot here to another profile. Let's call it Story 2. This is about a woman living in London. She works in a high-pressure corporate role, maybe law or finance. And on paper, her life is completely safe. She's in a secure office building. She has a high income. She is in no way physically threatened. But she describes her life as living with background noise panic.
That is a very, very evocative phrase. Background noise panic.
She said she feels like a soldier who never got the order to leave the battlefield. Her body's just constantly humming with a low level of adrenaline. Her lions aren't predators on the savannah. They are notification pings, passive-aggressive emails from her boss, LinkedIn updates about her peers getting promotions, and the constant global newsfeed of catastrophe.
Right.
And she knows, intellectually, she's aware that a mean email can't actually kill her. But her heart still races. Her palms sweat. Her digestion shuts down as if she's staring down a leopard in the tall grass.
And this is the perfect illustration of what's known as the smoke detector principle.
The smoke detector principle. I've heard this term thrown around, but let's really ground it for a minute. This comes from Randolph Nessie's work, right?
It does, and it completely solves the riddle of why anxiety is so common, so pervasive. We tend to ask the question, why is my brain broken? Why am I so anxious when I'm objectively safe? Nessie flips the question on its head and asks, what is the system designed to do?
It's designed to keep us alive, full stop.
It's designed to manage the ruthless economics of survival. Let's do the math. You're on the savannah. You hear a rustle in the tall grass. It implies a hidden agent. Now, that agent might be the wind, or it might be a lion.
A 50-50 chance. Wind or lion?
Not even 50-50. Let's say it's wind 999 times out of 1,000. Now, you have two choices. You can panic, which means run away, climb a tree, or you can ignore it. If you panic and it was just the wind, that's a false alarm. What is the cost?
You feel a bit silly. You burn. What? Maybe 100 calories sprinting to the nearest tree.
100 calories. A trivial metabolic cost. You're embarrassed for a second, but you are alive and unharmed. Now, consider the other side. You choose to stay. You assume it's the wind. But this one time, it is a lion. What is the cost of that miss?
The cost is everything. It's game over. You are removed from the gene pool. Genetic deletion.
Precisely. The cost of a false alarm is 100 calories. The cost of a miss is death. Nature acts as a ruthless actuary. It will always select for the system that makes the cheaper mistake.
So we're the descendants of the paranoids. We're the children of the people who ran away from the wind every single time, just in case.
Correct. Evolution has designed us to panic 999 times at a harmless noise just to ensure we survive the one time it's a real predator. So when the woman in London has a panic attack over an email, her system isn't malfunctioning. It is operating at optimal, life-preserving sensitivity. It's a smoke detector that the architect deliberately set to high because they'd rather you deal with a false alarm from burnt toast than burn to death in your sleep.
Okay, but here's the problem. The lions have changed. A lion eats you. An email just makes you feel bad for an afternoon. Why can't the brain tell the difference between a lethal threat and a non-lethal one?
Because of two things: path dependence and the sheer speed of the circuit. We have a fast pathway in the brain. The sensory input goes from the thalamus directly to the amygdala. It completely bypasses the cortex. It bypasses logic. It reacts to threat cues before you can even think.
Before the CEO gets a memo.
Long before. And in the EEA, a social threat was functionally identical to a physical threat.
That is the key, isn't it?
It's everything. In a small tribe of 50 to 100 people, if you were ostracized, if you're kicked out, you died. A lone human on the savannah is a dead human. So we evolved to process social rejection, a glare from a rival, a frown, a loss of status on the exact same neural hardware that processes the sight of a predator.
So when I see a pile on Twitter where I notice that my post got 0 likes, my amygdala doesn't see data. It sees exile. It sees the tribe turning its back on me.
It sees death. It screams, "The tribe is rejecting us. We are vulnerable. Predator approaching." And it dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream to prepare you for a fight for your life.
But the threat never leaves. The lion eventually walks away or you escape. The email sits in your inbox forever. The social media feed is always there.
That's the mismatch. The system is built for acute stress, fight or flight, an intense burst, and then it's over. You recover. But the London woman carries her lions in her pocket. She checks them at dinner. She checks them in bed. She is subjecting a system built for sprints to a never-ending marathon of low-grade terror.
We are redlining the engine while the car is parked safely in the garage.
And this creates that specific, strange paradox you mentioned earlier, the mismatch of fear. We are what you'd call hypophobic about modern threats and hyperphobic about ancient ones.
Hypo and hyper, so under-afraid and over-afraid.
Exactly. We are scared to death of public speaking, which is just tribal rejection on a stage, and of spiders, an ancient ancestral threat. But we are strangely, dangerously comfortable with cars, electrical sockets, and processed sugar.
Which are the things that actually kill us in the modern world?
By orders of magnitude. But they didn't exist in the Pleistocene. We haven't had the 10,000 generations required to evolve a hardwired instinctual fear response to a sedan or a donut. So the London woman is panic spiraling over a Slack message while simultaneously slowly killing herself with sedentary behavior and stress eating, and all the while her alarm system is screaming about the wrong thing.
Her smoke detector is working perfectly, but it's been installed in a room where the deadliest fire doesn't produce any smoke.
And the invisible gas is slowly suffocating her.
This brings us to the third, and to be honest, the darkest part of this whole deep dive. We've talked about the internal hardware, the algorithm, we've talked about the accidental mismatch, the anxiety, but now we have to talk about the trap. Because this isn't just an accident of history anymore, there is intention here. I want to talk about story 3. This one comes from a leaked internal report from a tech startup in Tokyo. They were working on something they called empathic VR.
Right, I read about this, the hyperreality project.
They weren't just building a game. They were building a world designed to be, and this is a quote, more rewarding than oxygen. They were using AI to map the specific neural vulnerabilities of their beta testers in real time. One tester, let's call him Kenji, he refused to take the headset off. When they finally forced him, he was apparently distraught. He claimed the virtual world felt more honest than the real one.
More honest. That phrase just chills me to the bone.
Because the AI had figured out exactly what visual and auditory inputs his amygdala craved, and it delivered them without any of the noise or friction of reality. It wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was a biological hijack. The report suggested that the technology was no longer competing for his time or his money, it was competing for his evolutionary soul. It was exploiting the very pathways that once ensured we bonded with our tribes and explored our environment.
It creates a closed loop where the fake signal is engineered to be superior to the real signal.
And it makes me think about the ethics of all this. I mean, if we can manufacture a reality that satisfies every ancient urge perfectly, do we stand any chance of resisting it? We risk becoming, I don't know, well-fed inhabitants of a digital zoo.
The zoo analogy is not just poetic, it is biologically precise. What Kenji experienced is the logical endpoint of a concept discovered decades ago by the ethologist Nico Tinbergen, the concept of supernormal stimuli.
The bird story. I love this story because it makes me feel slightly less stupid about my own brain's weird choices.
It is the foundational text for this entire problem. Tinbergen studied the oystercatcher bird, and these birds lay eggs that are, sort of speckled and gray. Tinbergen asked a simple question. Does the mother bird value the egg itself, or does she value the sign of the egg?
The signifier versus the signified.
Precisely. So he built a fake. He made a plaster egg. But he didn't just copy nature. He hacked it. He made the egg huge, so big the bird could barely even straddle it. And he painted the speckles giant and black, super high contrast. He created a hyper egg.
A supernormal stimulus.
And what happened? The mother bird abandoned her own real living eggs, her actual genetic future, and tried desperately to incubate the giant plaster fake. Her brain had a simple ancient rule. Speckled is good. Big is good. The fake took those rules and amplified them to the point of absurdity, and the bird's 50,000-year-old software couldn't distinguish the difference. It just saw a better signal.
She was literally sitting on a lie because it felt truer than the truth.
Tinbergen did it with butterflies, too. The silver-washed fritillary male looks for females based on the flickering rate of their wings. Tinbergen built a simple cardboard cylinder and just spun it at a super high speed with exaggerated flashing colors painted on it.
The disco butterfly.
The disco butterfly.
Right.
And the males completely ignored the real fertile females and tried to mate with the spinning cardboard cylinder.
So to Kenji, in Tokyo, the VR world is the cardboard cylinder. It's the giant plaster egg. It's the hyper-reality.
Precisely. It hits the valuation receptors harder than reality ever could. Real life is messy. Real relationships have friction and disappointment. Real sunlight is sometimes cloudy. The supernormal stimulus is pure signal with all the noise filtered out.
And this leads to what you called deceptive semiosis. Can you break that down?
Semiosis is just the study of signs. Biosemiotics tells us that all life relies on signs to navigate the world. A red apple signals sugar is present. A smile signals safety and cooperation. In nature, the sign and the reality are almost always inextricably linked. But industrial technology and now digital technology allows us to decouple them. We can create the sign, the neon orange color of the chip, the sweet taste of aspartame, without the underlying reality of the nutrient density.
It's a fake loop.
It's a lie told directly to your ancient valuation algorithm. And because cultural evolution technology happens a million times faster than biological evolution, we cannot adapt. We get stuck in what some call the thing-in-the-box problem. The packaging, the notification sound, the anticipation of the next video becomes more valuable than the actual content. We start craving the signifier more than the signified.
This is the zoo effect you mentioned.
Look at animals in captivity. If you give them supernormal food, high-calorie pellets, and remove the struggle of survival, do they become happy, thriving creatures? No. They develop stereotypes, they pace back and forth, they groom until they bleed, they become obese and lethargic.
The doom scroll their cage.
Effectively, yes. As a species, we are beginning to exhibit the signs of zoo animals. We are experiencing feeding circuit dysregulation, obesity, diabetes, and attentional collapse, addiction, ADHD. We are holobionts, these complex symbiotic ecosystems, but we are being managed by our own technology for a single, simple metric: engagement, profit.
The strategic irrationality we talked about. We consciously act against our own best interest because the rational brain, the PFC, is simply outvoted by a more ancient, more powerful system.
The valuation algorithm sees the supernormal stimulus, the VR world, the infinite scroll, the hyperpalatable food, and it screams, "This is the most important thing in the universe, more important than your own eggs." And the PFC, with its thinning gray matter, simply doesn't stand a chance.
This brings us to the cold reality of it all, the Lungkudisianshi. We've spent this hour dissecting the hardware, the glitch, the mismatch, and the trap. And usually this is the point in a deep dive where we would pivot to something like 3 easy tips to detox your dopamine. But we aren't doing that today.
No, because it would be disrespectful to the scale of the problem. The mismatch is fundamental. We need to sit with the gravity of it.
Natural selection is slow. Cultural evolution is fast. And that ever-widening gap between the two is where we now live.
And the diagnosis at the end of the day is not that we are broken. the engineer in San Francisco, the woman in London, the gamer in Tokyo, they aren't anomalies. They are not sick in the traditional sense of the word. They are case studies of a functional dysfunction.
They are executing their ancient programming with tragic precision. We are a species that was adapted for the savannah, and we are faithfully, correctly responding to the bars of our cage, confusing the digital feed for the ancient world. We are looking for berries in a screen and running from lions in an email, and until we can fully grasp that mechanism, we are just birds sitting on a giant plaster egg wondering why it never ever hatches.